First story. My 37M wife, 45F, asked me if we could have an open relationship after she was already had an affair I didn't know about until today. What should I do? I don't really know where to start, so I'm just going to jump right in the deep end. My wife and I have been married for a little over 6.5 years. Over the last 2 years or so, I have slowly noticed her starting to get more distant and stop being emotionally invested. I will readily admit that this is mostly through my own faults. Since I got out of the military, I have struggled with holding a steady job. However, I have held my current position for almost a year and don't really have any disposable income. We've been struggling financially, as most people are nowadays. I will say she doesn't work a traditional job, as she's focusing on streaming, as she had quite a lot of growth recently. Now this is something we agreed upon, that she could leave her job and stream full-time. Since my VHX and base salary are enough, if barely, to cover our expenses. I've been in and out of jobs constantly, and working here has been the longest steady job I've had. As the other ones, I only held positions for around 6 months at a time, with maybe a few weeks in between jobs. I'm almost at a whole year at my current job, but the lack of consistency definitely has contributed to financial stress. About 3 years ago, she told me something that I wasn't expecting, as she had never mentioned it before. It was that she had always thought she might be polyamorous but had never tried. If you don't know what that is, it is essentially having multiple romantic partners, sometimes sexual, sometimes not. When she told me, and asked if it was something I would be okay with, it came as a bit of a shock. I told her it was something I really wasn't comfortable with, and that I am fully invested into her as a partner, and expected the same from her. After all, we had been married for a couple years at that point, and while we had rushed into it pretty quick, I felt like we were doing pretty good, just us two. Over the years, there have been times where she's mentioned online friends that she talks to often, mostly men, who, while she's never admitted it, I could always tell that she had developed feelings for some of them. Not all, but from what I can gather, there have been 2 instances. I will admit that over the last 2 years, a lot of the romance has left. I stopped doing the little things I did to show her affection. I became moody and depressed, and really just wanted to be left alone all the time. As a result of that, she has been feeling more and more, in her own words, as though she is a mother maid, and is having to take care of a child. Because this is how she felt and perceived me, she lost her sexual attraction to me. We stopped having sex regularly, as it slowly went from semi-weekly to semi-monthly to only on special occasions, birthdays, Christmas. In that regard, we have not had an encounter in going on 14 months, as she had not been willing for Christmas last year. Recently, she has met a new guy, number 2 from my above explication. They have known each other for 11 days as of writing this post. Yesterday, he got into a pretty bad accident and is currently in the hospital. After it happened, it was only my 2nd or 3rd time hearing about the guy. She had met him through her stream Discord, and they had hit it off and became friends. While the accident is horrible and it's understandable that she's worried about him, she was not the level of worried you would be if a friend of yours got into a wreck like that. Sure, you would want them to be okay and sad it happened, but she was absolutely distraught. I hadn't seen her that worried in a long time. I asked her about it, and she admitted that they have been flirting in their online chats, and he had expressed interest in starting something serious with her. She insisted that she had turned him down because she was married, and I wasn't okay with her being in a poly relationship. But that got us back on the subject, and for the first time in a good while, we had a real conversation. We talked about it for 5 hours before I had to leave for work, and we aired a ton of feelings. She expressed how unloved, unappreciated, unwanted, and undesirable she felt. She told me that he had quite a bit of money and was a multimillionaire, as he owned a couple of businesses. Easily enough that he could retire now at around 32 and still be comfortable the rest of his life. To that end, he had offered to buy her a piece of property back in her home state so she could be closer to her family, in addition to some very expensive gifts for her. She said that while she eventually turned him down, it was something that she had to think about for a while. This was a big wake-up call, to be honest, and I was determined to turn over a new leaf. I told her that her wanting to open the relationship was something I had occasionally thought about, but was scared to try, as I didn't want to ruin what we had, and quite frankly didn't want to share my wife with someone. So I told her that while I wasn't 100% against it anymore, I would need to take a couple of days to figure out my thoughts and work out how I feel. I left for work since I'm on overnights and spent the shift with it just consuming me. I came eventually to the conclusion that it might just have to be a band-aid that gets ripped off and wouldn't be as bad as I was expecting. I decided that before I made any kind of decision, that I was at least entitled to read some of messages to see how they interacted. Today when I got home, I was very affectionate and we spent a few hours of genuine quality time together. Since I had the next 3 days off, I wanted to spend as much good quality time as possible with her, which, as I've mentioned, I had almost entirely stopped doing, as I had stopped putting in the effort. We laid in bed and snuggled, and I cooked for her, which is something I rarely do anymore. We played some video games together for yet again, the first time in a while. I felt happy again, and I could tell that saw the effort and she was open that it was a great first step towards getting what we had back. We spent the day together, and it was great. Before the day was over, however, I wanted to ask her about the messages and see if she was willing to let me look at them. I'm not going to dig through her phone to look at them. People doing that has always felt wrong to me. So I asked her about it an hour before I had to leave for work. She was very taken aback and didn't seem too receptive about the idea. This immediately set off alarm bells and I started to pray. I asked if it was because of something that she had said about me to him. Since I had realized how much she had resented me recently, I expected it to have been her bad-mouthing me. She said that wasn't it, so I asked if it was something that she said to him. She said that it was something like that, which caught me off, because those were really the only two options. Until I realized what had been happening, I asked how bad the flirting we had talked about earlier was. She went silent. I asked she had sent him anything, and after a while of silence admitted that they had been consistently and consensually sexting and having erotic Discord calls together while I'm asleep during the day. I was floored. I had never even considered that in our 6 years of marriage I would find myself in this position. If the roles had been reversed and I had been feeling as neglected as she has, I know for a fact that I would never do something like that to her. She eventually went to bed and I'm writing this post, still struggling to process what has happened. But now it feels as though she only brought up the poly thing again, because she was already having what I consider to be an affair, and she wanted to help us, after she had already cheated. She agreed to schedule couples counseling for next week to talk with a specialist, since I do want to work on the marriage. She's agreed to let me read through the messages, which I did, and it was very hard to do, to say the least. Not going into too much detail, but it was pretty graphic. And she bashed me pretty hard about how unloved I make her feel and how she feels more like a mother or maid to me than my wife. And she has agreed to completely cut ties with him and already has. I wanted to work harder to fix the marriage, but now it feels like I'm too late, and I've lost her forever because I drove her away. But at the same time, I just can't bring myself to leave because of my own inattentiveness, because of what she's been doing. I keep having these thoughts like I deserve for this to have happened since I neglected her for so long. But I also really do love her, and while reading through the messages it's very clear that loved me fiercely for a long time, but just got tired of feeling alone and is just frustrated. My wife told me years ago she wanted a polyamorous relationship. I said no, and 2 weeks ago she went behind my back and had an online affair. No wrong answers, I just need someone to talk to about this and don't really have anyone to confide in, but Is this something I've brought on myself, or are her actions her own, and I'm being gaslit? Second story. Do I tell his wife who I am even though she said she doesn't want to know? I had an affair with a co-worker who is lying to his wife about who I am. He told her we met randomly at a coffee shop so presumably wouldn't see me again. I'm not sure if I should reach out and tell her who I am because she said she didn't want to know, but he sees me every day when she thinks I'm blocked. I had an affair with a co-worker that ended roughly 4 months ago. He's married. I'm not. Only I didn't know that he was still married. He fed me the "we're separated" line. In hindsight is 2020, but I believed him at the time. I became pregnant, so he told her, and they then decided to work through it because, as I figured out later, she was pregnant too. I ended up terminating my pregnancy as the entire ordeal was incredibly traumatic. When he came over to break up with me, his wife asked to speak with me on the phone. She asked basic questions about how long the affair was and about my pregnancy. I apologized profusely, but obviously she didn't want to hear it, which I understand. She told me that she didn't want to know my name, where I work, where I live, or anything about me. She said that she wanted this so that they could fix their marriage without her comparing herself to me. Before they hung up, she told him to block me on everything so that I couldn't contact him. He told me after that when she asked how we met, he said at a coffee shop as a way to suggest we had no other connections. It has been months and the guilt eats at me. I can't leave my job. I have a very niche role that makes switching jobs incredibly difficult. I've looked, but the best opportunity would have taken me 10 hours away from my family. And to make everything worse, he still makes comments here and there that I personally would not be okay with my partner saying to anyone, much less someone he had an affair with. I've threatened to tell her to get him to leave, but he argued that she wouldn't believe me, which is a possibility, I guess. Our roles are very connected, so I interact with him daily for great lengths of time. Basically, I'm not sure if I should tell her or not. She was adamant that she didn't want to know, but I feel like if she knew he saw me every day, that she'd want to know that. Is it better to tell her and hurt her even more but give her the truth? Or to just keep it from her and hope she doesn't find out and lives as happily as she can? She has since had the baby, so is dealing with a new baby, which is meant to be the happiest time of her life. I don't want to take even more from her. I'm torn on what the right thing to do is. Reading back over this, I feel like I sound stupid. I'm literally awake in the middle of the night stressing about this, so my thoughts are coming out like a demented Ferris wheel. Any advice or opinions would be so nice. Thank you so much if you read all of this. Update. I did get a mix of feeling, but mostly, it seems like the larger opinion is to tell her. I just want to clarify, add context. Firstly, we live in a state that requires a separation before divorce. He told me they had tried but were over. He and I spent a lot of time together, meaning most days after work, every weekend, including 2 overnight trips. I met his friends and mom. I really didn't know. I also absolutely do not want him back for any reason. I'm still in major grief over the loss of my pregnancy and the made-up future he had created for me. I realize the weakness of myself in falling so hard and quickly for a complete liar. I've been in therapy ever since the abortion, and my therapist has helped me with grief and my self-esteem since then, and while I'm making huge progress, I know I have a ways to go. Second, I only haven't told her anything until now because I wanted to respect her wishes in healing. But he has dropped information on me since then that obviously causes me to question if she really knows what she's saying, since he's still lying to her. He has told me that she obsesses over his location and who he's talking to because she's terrified he'll reach back out to me. The comments he makes are telling me things like how amazing and wonderful and beautiful he thinks I am. Even the occasional "I still love you" type comments, which I know to not fall for. I respond by saying things like, "Wow, your wife is lucky," in a pathetic attempt at him trying to realize what he's continuing to do to her. With all of that said, I think I've decided to send her an anonymous message asking if she's sure she doesn't want to know because he's still lying to her. I 100% would want to know if I were her, but I don't want to take the choice away from her. I hate that I'm bringing the pain back up for her, but I believe that any person would want to know if their reconciliation was based on a lie. If she doesn't respond or doesn't want to know, I'll have to accept it and move forward knowing it's really her choice. I'll update again if I hear anything. This is a great point that I really haven't considered. We are in equal positions in a very relaxed environment. We have several couples already that we work with. I don't fear I'd lose my job based on the affair alone, but now I worry that she could spin it and convince him to say I'm harassing him. I hate to keep it from her, but I need a job regardless. She knows he cheated and stayed, so telling her may not do anything anyways except to bring me down further. I need to sit and think on it more. Thank you for pointing this out. He absolutely could leave, and should. He keeps making comments to others about his future at our company, so I don't think it's in his plans. I've asked him in the beginning to leave, but he said basically I can't dictate his career. We are equals in a relaxed office. We have multiple couples. I debated telling HR about his recent comments, but honestly shame and humiliation prevent me from saying anything. I have texts from when we were together, but they're two-sided, and all texts ended when she found out. I really don't want to tell her because I know it will hurt her even more, but it's literally eating me alive. I've dealt with a lot of guilt in therapy and still working towards it. Before, I at least didn't know. Now I feel worse that I know and haven't done anything. I learned a lot of hard lessons. Trust me, I've beaten myself up for it every single day since. I assume you're probably right. She obviously wasn't very kind when I spoke with her, which I completely and totally expected and understand. I keep thinking what I would want, but she's not me and I can't think for her. This is a hard position that I got myself in. I'm trying to move forward the best way possible to try and make good choices. But sometimes it's not as black and white. For months, we used condoms, but one broke. It was right after my period, so I did stupid mental gymnastics and convinced myself it would be fine. Just another one of my great choices in life, I guess. I would consider it, but unfortunately having the abortion really messed with me, and I need my support system close in my super low times. As much as he ruins my daily work life, I credit my family for a lot of my reason to be here. Hopefully one day I'll be in a better mental place that allows me that option. Yes, I meant in telling her. I feel like I'm taking her choice away from her and vetoing her decision. Every outcome is shitty. I also did use protection. I know I made plenty of mistakes. I'm just trying really hard to make a thought-out decision of what's right to try somehow to rectify all the wrong I've done. I don't want her to have any more hurt. She never deserved this. She's going to hurt either way, and it's hard having that knowledge to either keep something from her or tell her and hurt her in each situation. I've been cheated on. I completely understand the hate that cheaters and their cheating partners get. But being on this side really sucks too. But I'm an adult. I made stupid adult decisions. I'm trying to forgive myself every day, even when I feel in my heart I don't deserve it. Sorry I'm unloading this on you, but the pain is almost suffocating sometimes. Thank you for talking to a stranger about the worst thing they've done with kindness. Update. Do I tell his wife? I ended up discussing with my therapist what to do. We basically talked about how his wife didn't want to know who I was. So I decided to message her anonymously saying he was being inappropriate so she would know we worked together without knowing who I was. I figured that she could still keep that boundary if she wanted it. I delayed sending it, waiting until I was 100% sure this was the best option. I got lucky because he ended up sending me a message through our work chat that wasn't absolutely inappropriate to most people, but considering our history, crossed a line. I included the screenshot in case she didn't believe me. A week later, I, along with Fuckface and another worker, were called out to a customer site to fix a software issue. This is very rare as most problems are solved remotely. The customer site was downtown in a shopping area. We fixed the issue, then went outside to load up. As we were walking out, I noticed his wife and baby walking down the sidewalk. I of course have looked her up on social media, so I think I noticed before he did. I'm not sure if it was a complete accident or if she noticed him out during the workday, but she came up and spoke to him. She noticed my handbag and complimented me with a follow-up question. For context, we have spoken on the phone. I also have a regional accent as my family, and I relocated when I was in middle school. My accent is unique in my area. When I responded to her, she paused. We kept loading her up and he followed her to the car. He came back and told us something came up and we should head back without him. I got back and immediately alerted HR to the situation. I let them know it had been over for some time but wanted them to be aware. After work I went home and had a few drinks. He tried calling me. I ignored it. His wife left a message basically calling me a whore and to stay away from him until he finds another job. She also asked for me to answer some more questions. I haven't responded and won't. I'm sure she is hurt but nothing I say will fix it. I also can't keep bearing the guilt for something that I didn't willingly partake in. I know some will disagree but I don't want to relive this anymore. I have never hated anyone in my life, but I hate that man and if she chose to stay with him, that's their marriage to fix, not mine. Thank you everyone that took the time to read and respond to my last post. I read every comment and sat on it for a while before coming to my decision that I unfortunately should have made sooner. I looked her up after the fact, and meeting his mother and friends was enough for me to believe he was separated. He doesn't have social media, she does. I didn't look her up while we were dating because I didn't see a point in that. Her profile is private anyways and he's not on what's public so I wouldn't have known anyways. As I have said repeatedly, I absolutely do not want him. Why would I want someone who lied to not only me, but his wife, then left me pregnant? Geez, even if he was single and dumped me while I was pregnant, I wouldn't want him. I'm sure everyone assumes every other woman is some pick-me or something. But he lied to a woman he shared a bed with for months. He's a pretty damn good liar. I have been with shitty men before, but I have never been so completely blindsided by someone like that.